Welcome to Guy Aitchison's Reinventing the Tattoo. This is a special Reinventing the Tattoo podcast, art history edition with Keoki, Perpetual Roots, and it's going to be awesome. So get your notebooks ready. We try to do our best to put all of the information into the notes, but it takes us a little while, and you're going to want to keep track. They're going to talk about a lot of really awesome artists. Not sure where you're beaming in from. We are on the Facebooks, we're on YouTubes, we're on the podcasts. You can always find the latest schedule of upcoming live streams, as well as the library of replays at the Reinventing the Tattoo community. This is in either of the app stores. Pick your poison, Google Play or the Apple App Store. Or if you just want your ISP to rat you out, you go straight to community.reinventingthetattoo.com, and you don't even need to put it on your mobile. You could just go straight through your computer. And the first link you'll see is going to be the events, because that's one of the cornerstones. We do live events like this. It's pretty amazing. We also do reinventing drawing groups where artists beam in, so it's a split Zoom, and there's artists from all around the world doing either their tattoo design homework or just working on paintings. It's pretty awesome. Also great to just tune into to check out the conversations. They haven't been boring yet, believe it or not. And I've been listening to like nearly all of them. So if you have, they're great for your front room. If you're looking for some distraction for your clients, you can go to the Reinventing the Tattoo community library and check out all of the previous shows. Let's see, we want to make sure we thank our sponsors, Inkjet Stencils. If you go to the community, we have 2 or 3 webinars with Donna and Andre Malcolm and Frank Conception, and they go through the computers, and you can print, you do all of your reference on the computer or on your iPad, and then you print it out straight from your printer. Saves your hands, saves time, all that stuff. It's great. Inkjet Stencils. Also, rawpigments.co, a pigment company from California. They are acrylic-free and vegan inks. They're getting they got tapped right into the source of the raw pigments, right? It's rawpigments.co. You could check out Lauren from Raw Pigments hosted a business call. It's got like 20 different people on it. It was pretty awesome. They talked about inks among all the other things. And again, that's in the library. Check it out. Affiliates, other networks that you should be checking out, the Fireside Tattoo Network. Jake Meeks has an awesome YouTube channel and a podcast. And then Amy Nichols from the Apprenticeship Diaries has a great podcast and YouTube channel. I know they're all shows, right? She's interviewing apprentices, mentors, not only in tattooing, but in all sorts of other places. Okay. I think I caught everything. If not, I apologize. We are doing these introductions live every time. We tried to record them, or we're going to record them, but then we read somewhere that it's more natural to just do it live. So fuck it. If you write in the chat rooms how this is working for you, where you're beaming in from, if you have any questions, I could beam in the second half maybe, or at the end to ask your questions. And please share it around. Oh, that's right. The podcast and the YouTube channel are brand new. Reinventing is nearly 30 years old. It's amazing. But these are 2 brand new channels. So please go give them a follow and share them. Everyone's on the YouTube and the podcast these days. I am going to hop in the background and let Guy do some, take it away.
Right on. Thank you, Gabe. And thanks everyone who's tuned in today. This is, I've kind of lost count, but we've been doing these art history broadcasts roughly twice a month, and it's ended up going to some pretty interesting places. And in the course of thinking about subjects to cover or periods of history to cover, I kept coming back to Keoki because one time he came up here to Hyperspace Studios to talk about a possible collaboration. And while we're knocking out these sketches, he's going into this dive into history and telling me all this really interesting stuff. It's something he's very knowledgeable about. Keoki, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, brother.
And you can find Keoki on Instagram at Perpetual Roots with a Z at the end. And you're in Atlanta currently, but you started out in the Hawaiian Islands, correct?
Oh, yes. I was born and raised out in Hawaii. Actually, my dad was military, traveled the world, been all over the place. Ended up getting into tattooing right about my high school days, to say about the late mid 90s. My best friend was tattooing out of high school, tattooing all the guys back in the 90s. What they did, guitar strings and India ink. It was one of those days. And I ended up doing designs, drawing some designs for my friend, and never ever in my life did I think I was going to be a tattoo artist. I was just drawing. I loved art, loved drawing, loved creating things. And my best friend had one day asked me to tattoo him. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I wanted to tattoo people. I didn't know if I wanted to. I couldn't fathom the thought of sticking a needle in someone's skin. But my best friend walked me through it. Did my first tattoo on my best friend, and I fell in love with it. And I just kept going from there. Traveled all over the world. Been to Denmark, Puerto Rico, all the way through the States, to Hawaii. But did majority of my. I think I've been at it 20 years now, and about 12 of those years are home in Hawaii, and then the rest traveling the world. So it's been a fun journey, brother.
And what's the name of the shop you're opening right now?
It's going to be Perpetual Roots Tattoo.
Right on. And that's in is it in Atlanta proper or one of the suburbs there?
We're in the northern, outside of the perimeter of Atlanta, in the northeastern corner, down there by Lawrenceville, by Peachtree Corners, out there.
And Keoki, he specializes in work that's very South Pacific based, but with a twist. This is one of the things that I noticed about his work, because of course I love 3D effects, and I've seen him incorporating that into his work, and I think that's a very natural fit. Bio and tribal obviously have a lot of common threads to them, and so something like this, it's got so much flow and overlapping layers, just totally lends itself towards the idea of bringing in additional depth effects, cast shadows, and things like that. So yeah, you've got the ancient and the modern here. I'd love to hear a little bit about just a rough sketch of what you know about South Pacific tattoo history. Now, we know that Captain Cook discovered tattooed people when he was out there, and I couldn't say when that was, but it was several hundred years ago. How far back does it stretch that we know of, the history of large tattooing?
Well, we know that the word Tatau dates back to 1500 years BC. So it's definitely the BC. It's been a long time, about 3,000, 4,000 years old. So Polynesian tattooing goes back that far. The word Tatau was, like you said, brought by Captain Cook up in what I think was the 1700s, back over to Europe, and then started to get a big following from there. But it goes and dates back in the Tahitian culture back to the 1500s BC.
That's incredible. And of course, we're talking about a not just casual marking of people, but this is an overall body look. And I imagine that, obviously we don't have anything prior to Captain Cook in terms of Western records of this stuff, right? But immediately, the first thing I noticed when I saw these photos is, wow, these are bodysuits.
Yes, they're definitely large tattoos that encompass large portions of the body. The most common would be from the mid torso to the knees, where you see popular in the Samoan culture, as well as the New Zealand or the Maoris. They have what they call a puhoro. The Samoans have their pe'a or their malufie. It's common amongst the Fijians, Tahitians, and stuff like that. It's definitely large. The Maoris also have their ta'amoko, or their full face mokos that they have. But large portions.
Well known for that. But okay, so what are some of the reasons, at least in modern day, that we know of why people get these tattoos? They don't just casually get them the way we Westerners do. It's sort of a more formal rite of passage, isn't it?
Yes. A lot of time these tattoos, in all the Polynesian cultures, all the different cultures are a transition from adolescence to adulthood. It was that sense of that growth from a youth to a man, or to a young woman to a grown woman, in their roles, their responsibilities in their society, in their village, their rank, their family, everything where they came from. It's kind of like, I like to look at it as like a military uniform. On a military uniform, you can see someone's name, their family name, or their last name. You can see the unit that they're from, the rank that they're in that unit. Then you can find out also the awards and the decorations that they have in there for themselves individually. So these tattoos were literally like uniforms that they wore to tell people who they were, the status of their family, where they came from, who they were in the village, and their roles, and everything. So, and their hierarchy. It was a unbelievable sense of identification.
So a person would earn additional tattoos as they achieve things.
Yes, there's definitely there would be. Well, the goal would be to get to that point, but like a lot of tattoos, like the Maoris and stuff, where they would do their tamokos on their face, they would do it in processes, as well as the Samoans, where they would start from a certain part of the tattoo and move forward. And it was a growth process through that to learn these morals and values and lessons. And you had to get to a point in your life where they felt you learned these lessons, or at the point where you're moving forward with these lessons, to be able to tattoo these tattoos.
So do you think that most likely that this is something that was part of the whole history? We're talking about a very formal use of tattooing for thousands of years in a part of the world. And it's kind of funny, because we had this archaeologist in one of these talks, Dr. Dieter Wolf, and he was researching actual tattoo implements that they had found, that were thousands of years old. And so there's Otzi the Iceman, right? I'm sure you've heard of Otzi. And he's got a few tattoos on him. And when they first found him, the scientists were like, he's got tattoos. Okay, so they had criminal gangs back then. Okay. And I guess he got waylaid by his fellow criminals, and they took his gold and left his body in the tundra. And yeah, that it's good that now we can understand everything about this person, because he has tattoos. And meanwhile, that flies completely in the face of evidence where indigenous cultures that have tattoo traditions, those tattoos are usually a sign of rank, of importance, of status, etc. Criminal gang. I just thought that was kind of funny.
Right. No, well, all of that came through like when the start of the Western movement, as they started to move from Europe over to America, and they started to move westward. I think America was started for like the freedom of religion. There's a lot of religion that was established before it moved here. So America has a base period of negative connotation towards tattoos, period. We didn't even start with good stuff with tattoos. It was just straight coming from Christianity, from Catholicism, from all this stuff to America. So America has already had a base history of negativity with tattooing, where the rest of the world, it was big and good for society before Christianity and all the other types of religions had gone and banished these acts and these ceremonies of tattooing.
Right. Well, I mean, that's one of the things that happens with globalization is, and colonialism is, the traditional rituals, the folk arts and things like that. That stuff all gets hammered out because it's not part of the new culture they're trying to replace it with. I remember Boris from Hungary talking about how there had been like traditional tattooing back in his great-grandfather's day, but when the Soviet era happened, and all Russia and surrounding countries all became USSR, and all of their religions were banished, all of their folk traditions were banished, and so there's a few of these very old people walking around with these tattoos, but almost nobody knows what they mean.
Right. I mean, that's unfortunate, as you were saying, like how we lose few things as we go and assimilate to the new culture that is coming in, that is gone to, and really it's all about the culture that comes in. That's what it is. It's just unfortunate the culture that had come and taken over a lot of all these cultures around the world. We're just one that just didn't keep those particular parts of the culture as they moved forward with the assimilation to the new culture.
Right. Well, but now what we have is a total flip side of this, that this, so-called cultural appropriation, which, obviously that's something that has a negative connotation to it. But so somebody can come into tattooing, and because tattooing is what it is, I mean, people just love things that look cool, right?
Yeah, right.
Mix it up any way you can. Anything that they haven't seen before that looks cool, people are down, right? And so that they're going to look at anything that's beautiful and say, "Ooh, I want to incorporate that and change it up and put let's just put some of those, Pacific Island patterns in the background." Well, meanwhile, those patterns actually mean something specific, right?
Yes, yes.
And so it's rather than it being, kind of beaten out of existence by, a new culture, you've got people who are wanting to assimilate it, and because it looks cool, and kind of make it their own. But of course, there's both pros and cons to that. Some of them are going to end up learning about the history, but a lot of it's just going to become diluted.
Right. Well, I believe that's the responsibility of the artist. The artist in whatever we do and how we pass things, it's not just passing the artist, passing what you believe behind. Now, some people just do the art for the art, and then some people that for me, that's my responsibility is to teach people. I had one guy was talking about cultural appropriation, and I was like, well, if you don't teach culture, nobody will know what's appropriate. So if we don't teach it, then you'll never know. So my job is to teach people. I think what I love the most about, especially tattooing now, and people uniting, and whether what culture, whatever it is, whether it be European style tattoos, whether it be East Indian, all different, as well as Polynesian, is that back in the days, a lot of our cultures were forced to become a culture that we didn't want. We were assimilated due to colonialism, but it is now in life that we are able to choose the culture that we want to be a part of. And then people are choosing these because for whatever it is, be it that the art speaks to them, be it that the culture of the art speaks to them, and people are choosing these things. So it's the first time in the world in history that we're choosing what we want versus being forced to live a life where we have to live a different culture from what we want.
So as a teacher to the general public, let me just ask this sort of basic question. I've just been referring to it as South Pacific Island tattooing, but is there an accepted term for this sort of, I know it's a group of cultures that we're talking about.
Oh, well, there are several different cultures. Like a lot of people say, like you said, South Pacific kind of covers everybody. When they say Polynesian, now Polynesian tattoos are a part of a chain of islands. I think it comes about several thousand islands, starting from Hawaii, going to New Zealand, and then down to Easter Island or Rapa Nui. That is our triangle. That consists of Polynesia. Then there's another triangle called Melanesia and one called Micronesia. So there are several that encompass the whole Southern Pacific Islands, all the way across, all the way to South Asia, all the way, including Guam, like Saipan, and all the way down to that far east. So it's all Pacific Islands. So I guess you can call it Southern Pacific or just Pacific Islander tattooing, because we all have, it's kind of like we migrated through it from Southeast Asia, they say, and it came through the islands. So we all have a history or a connection in many ways to each other through that. So it's just evolutions of, I would say.
Okay, because I've heard people refer to it as Polynesian tattooing, but now you've pointed out there's several major archipelagos there that and that is just sort of a term that misses Micronesia and Melanesia. So I'll continue calling it South Pacific.
No, definitely.
So what are some of your favorites that stand out? Some of the styles that really, I mean, I've seen you've done a lot of very particular look, a lot of those, the very, very finely repeated patterns. Where specifically does that come from?
It definitely comes from the Samoan style. The Samoan and the Hawaiian are kind of more common of the style that we do. Now, the reason why, and you'll see that more common now ever since the 90s, where we have what we call the Neo-Polynesian kind of like trend that started to come out. going back into history, you know, a lot of tattooing around the world, especially around the Pacific Islands, was eradicated due to colonialization, like you're saying, religions, Catholicism, Christianity, Mormons, and all that stuff. So they eradicated a lot of the tattoos. Well, the Samoans were the only ones who were untouched. The Samoans have untouched over 2,000 years of tattooing and has never stopped. They were there were parts of Samoa that banned it, but there were parts in Samoa where it never stopped. So in the 1980s, there was a resurgence of Polynesian tattooing, and the Samoans began to go out and start reteaching cultures of how to do the tattoo. So the Samoans were the ones who kept this history and then thought to go back and teach it. So they went out to Tonga, to Fiji, to Hawaii, all of these different cultures that lost their tattooing and began to give this art back to them. So a lot of what you see now is mainly Samoan because they're the teachers. They're the teachers that gave us this. So you have a little bit of influence of what they have in the world. That's why they became the most popular style, the most popular of Polynesian cultures out there are these Samoans. A lot of people are more aware of the Samoans than any of the other ones. I like their tattoos because of the repetitive patterns and how I can use them to move with the shape and the form of the body. I've always found a particular flow to it. So I tell a lot of people that it's kind of a thing that I felt. It's kind of like music. You sit down, you kind of hear a beat and a rhythm, and you kind of go with it. So as I started to do my Polynesian designs, I noticed that the elongated patterns for me allowed me to define more of the body and the shape and what I wanted it to look like as we moved along. So you'll find a lot more of the continuous repetitive patterns, which are different from like other styles like the Tahitian or the Marquesans and more of the Eastern Polynesia, where they're more kind of blocky, a little bit of different style of actual patterns, or even the Maoris. The New Zealanders have a large negative space with what they call korus, or these curls that they do all along their tattoos. So, but I have found it more in my flow of my tattoos to go with more of the Samoan and Hawaiian style. So that's kind of a thing.
So, Gabe, let's see if we can find a picture that shows a close-up of one of those pieces, or maybe zoom in. I remember you showing me some details from some of these pieces, and there's some very specific things in there. You know, some are representing the sea and mountains and things like that. Let's see. Maybe if you could find one that's just all the patterning.
Yeah.
There was one that was just like an upper arm. Yeah, let's take a look at that one. Let's go ahead and zoom in on that one. And just as an example, we could zoom in a little closer. So what are some of the language elements that are in this piece?
So this design is more towards a Fijian base. A lot of the Fijians would tattoo in these reddish brown colors here that you see. The designs and the patterns are kind of universal. Some of them Fijian, a little bit of mixture of the Samoan and other cultures. When it came to meanings of designs, I think I was doing a presentation for the Explore Tattoo Conference, and as I got prepared for this Explore Tattoo Conference, I was doing my research, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't out there, you know, saying the wrong things and stuff. And so I thought to myself, like, what do all these patterns mean? And I was like, okay, well, let's start with the most basic of patterns. So I looked up a triangle. And I was like, okay, let me go research this triangle. So I researched the triangle in the Hawaiian culture, the Samoan culture, Fijian, New Zealand. And then I was like, wow, there's triangles in the Japanese culture. There's triangles in Native American culture. There's triangles in African tattoos. There's triangles in Gaelic and Old Norse tattoos. So then I started to think to myself, like, what makes a triangle capable of transcending cultures without somebody saying, bro, you stole my triangle, bro? Because that's pretty much what's going on. Everyone's like, this belongs to me, this belongs to that. And what it came down to was that, to me, and this is my belief on it, is that a triangle was like a rock, brother. It sits on the ground and it does nothing. The wind blows it, the water moves it. But it isn't until you take that triangle and you throw it at somebody, it becomes a weapon. When you pick up that triangle and you put it into a wall, it becomes a foundation. It is the purpose and intent that gives anything what we Polynesians call mana, call power. It is that purpose that we believe in that gives it strength. So every culture, in its sense, uses their triangle in their own way. And even then, down to the artist, the Hawaiians have a saying we call kauna. Kauna is the given meaning behind something. There's a song that I sing in Hawaiian culture called Papalina Lahi Lahi, and it speaks about a woman's rosy cheeks and how beautiful she looks when she dances. But the kauna, or the story behind it, is procreation. We really want to just tap those cheeks. So it's one of those things. It's like, it's, you know, it's one of those things. So there's a literal meaning and a given meaning. The given meaning is like a gift. Like I tell people, when I tattoo people, it's like naming a child. I'm giving them a gift of meaning, a gift of purpose for whatever their life is, purpose for whatever they believe in life. You know, I tell people, if you walk into a church and you burn a cross and throw it on the ground, people will lose their minds. But some people who don't believe in that cross won't, because it's the belief in the purpose of that tool that gives it strength. So even at that, on my designs, you see a in that particular design, we'll see a Fijian base or a representation of kind of a Fijian style. But all those meanings, we look at the history of where the meanings are, and then I give it its purpose for that individual. So in turn, each tattoo will individually mean something different for every individual. Now, back in the days, when you're getting a particular style of tattoo, like let's say the Samoan Malofie, which is the large tattoo that went from their mid-torso to their knees, that was given for the chiefs, and basically they're knights of the round table, or basically what we call, in the Samoan culture, they call them the Sungaimitis, or the people that were ordained by the chief to get these tattoos. Now, when you got these tattoos, it just meant that you were an honorable person, that if anybody in the village saw this tattoo, you were somebody that they can go to and they can ask questions, and you were honorable. You were that person knighted by the king to do that. So, I mean, before we went into the meanings, I just wanted to say that, because like those meanings are all, it's really up to the actual artist and the culture they come from. In the end, I tell people, everybody uses the words and, is, and was, but not everybody tells the same story. So it's how we portray our triangles and use our words that make us who we are, and pass the morals and values that we want to pass on. Because it isn't just a tattoo, it's the morals and values that you teach people through these tattoos, that when they see their tattoo every day, it reminds them of who they are and who they choose to be in life, and their then service to their community. Sorry, that went into a whole different tangent, brother.
No, that's great. That's great. And you know, it's interesting because I think that in a much looser sense, everyone that gets tattooed, there's a certain amount of that's going to be true. You know, it's a lot of us, we just get tattooed because we like tattoos, right? But the overall, you know, thing of putting ourselves through this, especially the larger work, you know, the bigger commitments, or we're traveling for an artist, or they might be in town, but it's a 1.5 year long project, and we have other expenses and we still do it. So, you know, we are giving ourselves some kind of weight of importance behind the act of getting the tattoo, even if it's not tied to some kind of, oh, I'm 18 now, and so I'm going to get this tattoo, or anything like that. You know, I think a lot of people start out getting tattoos thinking that they have to have a reason. You know, my grandfather died, so I'm going to get this memorial tattoo, and that's all fine and dandy. But then that person's second or third tattoo, it's like, man, the grandpa tattoo turned out great. I wonder what else I could get. Right.
Yeah. Right.
And so it's a little different, but you know, I think that there's still a sense of what you were saying there of, you know, when we look in the mirror and we see ourselves as tattooed people, or people who are in the process of getting work done, you know, that there is some sort of story that we have in our mind about who we are and what we're trying to accomplish, or the kind of people that we're trying to be.
Right. And it's like, there's a lot of people who tell me, they're like, oh, Keoki, well, you know, they get Polynesian tattoos from me, and I ask them about their other tattoos they might have, and they're, oh, that tattoo doesn't mean anything. I said, well, every tattoo has a meaning, whether the meaning is, it is just a drunken night with my friends and we had fun and we got these Tasmanian devils, you know, whatever. It's, everybody has, every story, every tattoo has a story and a meaning behind it, why you got it, and purpose, your intent might not, you would feel, or other people might feel, might not be as honorable as others, but it is the things that are important to us at the time that they need to be important. At the time that happened, that is what's important. That's what we wanted, and it is to satisfy that at that moment.
Yeah. So yeah, it's an interesting thing, because we're looking at a more formal approach to tattoo, or getting tattooed, right? And
Yes.
And I guess that's got to be changing a lot now. You know, the last time I went to Hawaii, it's been a while. Michelle and I went there, you know, in the early 2000s, and I remember being struck by how much large scale, nice looking tattooing there was. That, you know, almost all of it had this strong, you know, Polynesian kind of influence. And this could be just like, you know, the kid that was bagging groceries at the supermarket has got this really nice looking sleeve, you know, that clearly some thought went into, and it's definitely got a, you know, they had the goal of making something that looked attractive rather than just getting an armful of tattoos, which, you know, a lot of people do, right? And so, you know, even coming at it from I'm just a teenager and I'm, you know, my buddies are tattooing me, it still seemed like there was more of a sense of that history and of that kind of, you know, that goal to make this unified, attractive look at the bare minimum, you know, than you might see in a lot of Western tattooing.
Right. It's just that it's like a sense of identity, right? You know, once again, like I was saying with the military uniforms, you can tell a Marine versus an Army soldier versus an Air Force soldier by the uniforms that we wear. It was an identity, you know, and a lot of the Islanders, as we started to get this resurgence in the 90s, you know, in the 80s and 90s, that we started to try to get this identification of who we were. A lot of the kids, especially me growing up in the 90s, we didn't understand what half of that stuff meant. We didn't understand it. We just knew that for some reason, this is what the Hawaiians do. This is what I did as a Polynesian. And then it wasn't until I got into my journey of tattooing that I became a tattoo artist that I started to see the impact of the tattooing in society, in people's minds, their mentality of how they are in their family as well as their community, and started to understand these things in a sense, and then to look back in the history behind that's exactly what it was from the beginning, that it was just to help us identify who we are, what we do, and then how we're going to be a part of our big community. And it was a big thing for me, you know. But then even then, you look at tattoos have such a different, how would you say, interpretation as you travel through the Pacific. Like I remember a long time ago, a friend of mine, Isaiah Toitu, Suluape Isaiah Toitu, was sitting down, talked to me, and he asked me, Keoki, like, how do you know what patterns to color in? How do you know where to shade it, where to do this and that? And I just told him, I said, I don't know. I just had a feeling like if I put something here, then I didn't want to put too much black in this area. So I put this, leave negative space, and I was going back. And I just felt a balance in myself, you know. And then he told me that tattoos had a combination of two things, which were the balance of Po and Hina. Po is the male and Hina is the female. Po would be the ink that we put into the skin. The Hina is the negative space. And when we have balance in life, you have harmony in a tattoo, versus we can take it even into our art theory, art method, right? The whole balance of a tattoo and how a tattoo flows, Fibonacci swirls, a whole bunch of other things, you know, these things, understanding the flows in life. And then it started to get deeper to where he's saying, as a person, as an artist, like who you are in your life comes into your tattoos. If you have balance in your life, your tattoos will be balanced. If you are an unbalanced person in your life, your tattoos will become unbalanced, because your tattoos are really an external representation of who you are, just trying to find an external representation for somebody else. So it's just our energy flowing into all of that. And then I was doing my research and I went into the Maori style, the New Zealand style, and theirs is a complete different interpretation. They believe that their tattooing is a journey of two paths, the path of light and the path of darkness. So basically what is seen and what's not seen, how to control and unite our physical world with our spiritual world. So in the Maori tattooing, the actual physical ink is the visible world that you see today, things that you see here. Then the korus, or the flow of all the negative space, is the spirit world. And the Maoris actually were a culture full of meditation, and they believed in taking your spirit and bring it into your world. So understanding the mind and the body. That's why the tamoko, or the traditional Maori tattooing, was on their face, because they believed that they tattooed the most important part of the body, which was your head, because your mind and your spirit comes through your head. So they would tattoo their faces. And then they have their other style of tattooing, or anything else, called the kirituhi. Kirituhi, kiri means the skin, and tuhi means your art. So your skin art would be for your other parts of your body. But the traditional tamoko came on your face, and that's where the most important part of your body. So they took it to a spiritual sense, which is not to say the Samoans didn't, but looking at how they look at the perspective of everything too also went deep. And they both have their spiritual connection to everything. And it's all of that really gave me that growth in what I saw in my tattooing. You know, it wasn't just now a physical physical adornment on the body. It was going back to the whole purpose behind why we wear these things, and then to become stronger internally, to thus become stronger externally for your community. Sorry if I went on a tangent there, brother.
Oh, that's great. Well, I was thinking about what Sulapi had told you about the male and the female, and positive and negative. And my first thought was, I had a client recently who's a Zen meditator, and one of the ideas behind Zen Buddhism is the Sri Yantra, the interpenetration of opposites, which is, it's represented as this cluster of triangles pointing up and down and overlapping each other, and it turns them into this crazy wave of triangles. But that this is sort of like the root of all creation, is this kind of interaction between opposites. And so, of course, none of that is going to happen without balance. If one force or the other is too strong, eventually it ends up being either all black or all skin, if you want to look at it in the most simplistic sense. We're looking for that dynamic, interaction between elements that creates harmony, and that, we look at and just automatically think, wow, that's beautiful, that's attractive. And, what is beautiful, it's kind of funny that we even have that in us, that we can look at a mountain and say, wow, that's beautiful. Now, why did we evolve to have that ability to appreciate that mountain, or to appreciate, some art, but not other art? Because let's face it, there's a lot of ugly art out there too, right? And we have a different reaction to that than we do to the stuff that flows nicely. And I think that's one of the most striking things about the entire South Pacific style is it's got a beautiful flow to it. Clearly, that was it means all these things, but it was built up around the idea of, as long as we're marking our bodies, let's make it beautiful.
Right. And it's a thing. I tell people that like I went up to Denmark, and I went to tattoo in Denmark, and these gentlemen in Denmark were just going crazy about America. They're like, America's this, America's that. We hate America. And this is like, why is America so crazy? Why is America this and that? And I was telling the guys, I said, you got to understand, aside from other smaller countries, out of larger influential countries, America is the youngest country. Not a large, massive, influential country. We're the youngest ones. So I told him, said, we're the emo teenagers of the world. That's what we are. We are the guys who set different rules. We don't obey rules and stuff. America is a whole different mindset. We're just the youth of today. We are the youth, the innovation, the move forward in the earth. We are the next stage of evolution, I guess, if you want to call it. But if you look at all the cultures around the world, be it the Japanese, they have a sense of yin and yang. The Polynesians have that sense also of that balance of spiritual and stuff, that, like you said, that positive, negative. There's a balance of everything in life. America itself as a culture and as everything hasn't found completely our balance, because we're still the youngest culture out there. We are a culture trying to find ourselves. So what we're seeing with all of these cultures, whether it be Polynesian or anything else, that there's balance in everywhere, from Buddhism to everything all around the world. There's balance where we haven't found ours yet. We're just a new culture, like I said, growing with it. So to understand where we are as Americans and how we're learning these things, and then taking these from these older cultures like the Polynesians and our tattoos and what they meant, America is finding it, and we will find ours hopefully one day. But it's a whole sense behind it, because it's not just the Polynesians, it's everywhere. It's every culture that's ever tattooed, every culture that's ever had any sense of culture. There's balance in everything.
Well, hopefully we'll find ours as Americans, right? And that whole thing of not the balance, finding that balance. And, of course, one of the exciting things about America is this, we don't follow rules thing. And of course, on the one hand, that means there's more chaos and there's more disagreement. But I see people all over the world having political disagreements. So I don't know if that's uniquely our problem at all, but, it's really encouraged for us to find ourselves and explore ourselves. And it's not a conformist culture, or at least not so much as many other. Like we had some Swedish relatives visiting us, and they, comparing notes, and they were blown away by how strongly Americans value their individuality. Where they're like, yes, in Sweden we're happy to fit in. It's like, okay. Congratulations, and maybe things are more calm as a result. But I think that if the entire world would run that way, nothing would ever be invented anymore after a while.
Right. Evolution is inevitable. Evolution and how we move forward and grow in life. As with what happened with a lot of the Polynesian tattooings, like even nowadays where the Samoans have what they call their masinita tatau does, where the machine of style of tattooing and how they're trying to incorporate the cultures behind it. Like I had a friend of mine who I was tattooing and well, not tattooing, but we were just having a conversation, and he was talking to me about, maybe I should go and learn to do the tatau, or the tatau, the traditional style of tapping. And I told him, I said, I myself personally, it's I just learned from the machine. I feel comfortable with that. It's my thing. And he was like, well, that's the way it's supposed to be done. And I was like, well, there's a lot of people with boats fishing with fishing poles. You don't see them paddling canoes and throwing spears. It's about evolution and how we choose evolution, how we choose to move forward in life, right? We can take certain things as there are traditions that are kept for a lot of people, and everybody has their own way. But I told them, whether I fish with a fishing pole or a spear, I can still teach my children the morals and values behind what we do. I don't overfish. You catch what you eat. You throw the small ones back for later. You don't throw your rubbish in the water. The nurtures the morals and values in life. Like a lot of people talk about the modern style of tattooing that I do. I understand that me with my modern style tattooing, I do, but I understand that the tattooing back in the days passed morals and values to the people of society and who we chose to be in life. So it's not whether or not Dwayne Johnson stars in your movie or, somebody else, Jack Black. It's the moral behind the story. A lot of people talk about Jack and Jill, but they don't know the moral of the story. A lot of times the stories throughout history change. But then in the end, what is the moral that was passed on? So for me, what I do with a lot of my tattooing is, even though I may not do the traditional style or thing, we carry the energy and the mana, the strength behind what we do and what we pass to society. It isn't just a tattoo. Everybody who gets tattooed by me, it's my own personal thing that I pass that to them. Who do they choose to be? I have my conversation with them. I talk with them. And it's like, who do you want to be? Like, what made you go from here in life to here and stuff? And then from there, where do you want to move from here? What is keeping you going? What is your life? Culture, brother. A big thing about culture. There was a gentleman who had messaged me, and he was like, Keoki, I love your tattoos. Your tattoos are awesome. And it's like, but I don't like the way you tattoo non-Polynesians with Polynesian tattoos because you're offending my culture. So I was like, okay, well, touche. How about you ask me what I'm doing so we can understand each other, right? Then it came down into that whole sense with the culture and me passing forward with that. And I told him, I said, where are you from? He was, and what's your name? The guy's like, oh, my name's so-and-so. I'm my mom's from Hawaii. And I was like, okay, cool. So where are you from? He's like, oh, well, my grandmother's from Hawaii. And I was like, okay, well, where are you from? And he says, well, I'm from Florida, but my mom taught me what it means to be Hawaiian. So I told him, I said, okay, so what does it mean to be Hawaiian? And the guy said, well, I danced Tahitian growing up. And I said, well, Tahiti is another culture aside from Hawaii. It's a total different country, total different place. So Tahitian, I guess you dance Pacific Island. I guess that makes you a Pacific Island. Okay, carry on. He says, well, I eat musubi, which is a spam rice kind of sushi wrap in Hawaii. It's like a dish delicacy we have. I said, well, that's a Japanese dish that was brought to Hawaii. That's from something else. And so what Hawaiian do you understand? And he was like, I don't get it. I said, well, culture is what we call the characteristic features of everyday life shared amongst the same group of people in the same place in the same time. So if I wear my hat backwards and somebody wears their hat backwards at the same time, we can create a culture of wearing our hat backwards. Culture is not your ethnicity. Culture is your everyday surroundings. It is what you're raised in. It is who you are. Now, if you want to go and learn a culture, the cool thing is we can become cultured. You can go to a place and live amongst the people. You can live in Japan and find out what it means to be Japanese. You can find out what it means to be Hawaiian, what it means to be Samoan. Culture is what's passed to us. It has no connection to our ethnical background. So I told him, I said, so do you understand what it means? And I started going into the whole interpretation of what I experienced being raised in Hawaii, and it was completely different than being raised in Florida. So the same thing with our cultures and stuff. This, all I'm doing is passing the culture that I know. I can't be a Polynesian 400 years ago, but I can tell you what it means to be one right now. This is what I can do. And that's the only culture I can pass, is what is today. And what do we want to move forward in the culture that we choose to be? Because now our villages have just become bigger. We've gone from a small village, this small, to a worldwide village. Now everybody is influencing everybody. You know, it's a world culture nowadays. There's not a single culture out in the world that isn't influenced by another culture. We can all look at each other. We can see what's going on in China right now. And, you know, whether or not, you know, we choose to do what they do, that's our choice. But we're now influenced by seeing what other people do. So we can go on and Google other cultures, other people. You can go on Google Maps and Google World, whatever. You can see the earth. You can see how things are and see things. That's like, so it's one of those things where, I mean, it's culture is what we teach our children and our people every day. Tattoos are a form of identity. It does not define our culture. Our culture is who we are, but our tattoos identify that. And who we choose to be is our flag that we wave on ourselves and our tattoos and our bodies and every day. And that's what we do. So I don't know. That's a deeper philosophical thing. Sorry, brother.
This is great. I mean, the thing is, defining culture that way, you know, it sort of frees up all of this language to be used in a more personal way. You know, it's kind of like, okay, the culture isn't something I'm stuck with based on, you know, what my grandparents were, you know, where they came from. You know, I'm not, you know, committed to listening to the same music as my grandparents or any of this stuff, right? That there's no reason why I can't reach out there and just see what I like. So what you're doing and what other artists who are, you know, respectfully appropriating things like this, right? You know, with the globalization happening, with everything mixing with everything else and influencing everything else, it helps keep the history of these island cultures from just sort of getting diluted into nothing. It still has a strong presence. And when you look at this kind of tattooing, it feels historic. You know what I mean? It feels like you're looking at something classic, the same way as when you look at a really well done classic American traditional tattoo. It feels historic, right? Or a really well done Japanese bodysuit that has all the right balance to it. It feels historic. You know, there's more to it than just the fact that it's attractive, you know. And think of all the people getting Japanese stuff tattooed on them that are not Japanese in any way, shape, or form. And I think a long time ago, most people just accepted that was cool, right?
Right.
And so I don't see any reason why that can't apply across the board, you know, and especially because, as with the Japanese style, you know, the artists doing it, they wanted to learn the history, they wanted to learn the mythology. You know, the really good practitioners of that style, whether they were born Japanese or not, are approaching it respectfully. And so this is your answer to the young man from Florida. Is
right. And it was the thing, that's where I eventually in my career had moved towards the third dimension, as you had talked earlier, the third dimension of Polynesian and everything like that. Like it's like, to me, understanding that our Polynesian tattooing had a meaning in everything we do, everything, the purpose of every individual line has a meaning and purpose behind things. So even when I went to my third dimension thing, it was a big thing for me, being my mom's family are immigrants from Puerto Rico, as well as immigrants from Scotland. My great grandfather being pure Hawaiian. So the Hawaiian, the Scottish, and the Puerto Ricans. Then my dad's side are immigrants from China, as well as, you know, from Native Americans, from Cherokees, from my great grandfather is from Alabama. So my name is George Dolly Davis IV. It's about as American as it gets, you know. Keoki is what I go with all my friends. Keoki is Hawaiian, Georgian Hawaiian, but George Dolly Davis IV is my name. So being a Polynesian kid that is mixed and lived amongst the world. I've traveled the world. I've been all over, from Asia to Europe, all over the place, and understanding culture and people and who we are. It was one of those things where you had that sense of culture, once again, versus ethnicity. What's in my blood versus how I was raised. You can have people of a particular race raised in a different culture, right? You get all that kind of stuff. So my third dimension of my Polynesian was to where you can see the break in my skin and see who I am underneath. Through all of this is what I revealed to myself. It was a sense of me having a reveal within myself. So when I took my Polynesian designs and and opened them up to my 3D. Is that you may see me on the outside as this, but inside, these are my roots. This is who I am. And so thus gave birth to why I could see my third dimension in the way that I saw it and how I can move it, because my purpose and my understanding behind why I created that was the whole big part of it.
Nice. So before we run out of time, I was going to ask you if there are any other artists who work in the South Pacific style that you would really like people to know their names.
First of all, the biggest of all is the Su'a family, the Su'a Suluapes, Su'a Suluape Alaiva'a, and his son, that would be Manu right there. Manu Farenz, he's from Tahiti. Below that picture, we have Su'a Suluape Aisea Toitu. He is from, he is of Tongan and Samoan descent, the first Tongan to have the title to do the traditional tattooing in over 200 years. Isaiah is a good friend of mine, and probably one of the persons I look up to the most in my career is Isaiah. Below him, we have there, which is the family himself. This is Su'a Suluape Alaiva'a. And him and his two sons, Peter and Paul Jr., also Suluapis, that are the family that has carried the Samoan tattooing for over 2,000 years. This gentleman right here, I was at the Pacific Ink and Art Tattoo Expo a couple years ago, and this gentleman comes from Samoa to tattoo and teach the cultures and everything. And he was standing in the aisle as Big Gus was getting pictures from these girls. And these girls are like, oh my God, Big Gus from TV. And he was just this old man with his EA Lava Lava on, with his wife Peter on, just standing there. And I was like, these people have no idea that 2,000 years of tattooing is in this gentleman right here and his family. There's a story a long time ago that say tattooing was brought to Samoa by Tilafainga and Taima, the two daughters that came from Fiji to Samoa to pass it and they gave it to the Su'a family, which is then his line, the Su'a Suluape family. This is the man of all men. If people can, they study this gentleman right here. He is the epitome of it all right here. And is the guy, him and his brother had started in the 80s to pass and start teaching the world. It is this gentleman right here who has brought back tattooing to many cultures around the world and has given his contribution to that around the world. It's an unbelievable gentleman right here. Underneath him, we have Keoni Nunez, who is a kahuna, learned also from Su'a Suluape Alaiva'a, the gentleman that we just saw earlier. He got his title from that gentleman and was taught the first person in Hawaii to do Hawaiian tattooing in a long time, well over 100 years. That guy. And then from there, from Keoni Nunez, under him, the next gentleman is Keli'i Makua, which is the first Hawaiian to be given the title of Kahuna Pauhi, or the Pauhi, the Hawaiian style of tattooing. He now does his tattooing in Hawaii, but he is the first Hawaiian. I think he apprenticed like 20 or 30 years under Keoni, which all learned from the other gentleman, Su'a Suluape Alaiva'a. He has passed his line through all the way down. So these gentlemen right here are unbelievable. Do we have anybody else, I believe, underneath the pictures? Any of them? Okay, no, those are just tattoo pictures. That we have a lot of neo-traditional tattoo artists all over the world, but these are the gentlemen that have made a big influence in my life, gentlemen, as well as Mr. Lane Wilkin. I don't have his picture, but he's in Las Vegas. He has brought back the traditional Filipino style of tattooing. Lane Wilkins, unbelievable gentleman, and definitely full of knowledge and carrying that tradition as well as moving forward in the current day in culture.
Nice. Well, I think we've got a few minutes for audience questions. If anyone's got any, Gabe, has anyone chimed in? And if you've been wondering anything, now's your chance. We've got about 5 minutes to field a few of these.
Yeah, let me start off with some of the comments. I think there might be some questions. Let's see here. So Jason Lesser and Melissa say hello. Dana says, that's my brother. Get it, Keoks. Ricardo is talking about triangles. He's got 5 exclamation points. So I guess that would appropriately be triangles. Sandy says, great content. That's a perfect concept. I don't know exactly where. Jason Lesser is getting his mind blown. This is mind expanding on a whole new level. Melissa says, LOL. No, she laughs out loud. He's like that in person too, Jason. So much inspiration, says Melissa Sink. Jason Lesser says, will there be a part 2? And then Melissa Sink says, Rabbi says hi, Keoki. Okay. Whew. A little bit more. Allison says, this is from the YouTube channel, beaming in from Alabama this afternoon. Hey, all. She says, I love Keoki's passion. This is a great history lesson. One or two more here before I'll give you a chance to respond to anybody here. We've got Corey Lee says, hi, guys. Valerie says, hello, why not have subtitles in French? Thank you so much. Oh, and then I said, we will soon enough. And then she said, thank you, namaste. You know, we actually could figure out how to get the Google Babel fish to work. One of our community members was translating the Spanish art jam using Google on her phone. And she's smarter than I was because I tried it once and couldn't do it, but she knows how to do it and did it. Anyways, let's see. So we have some people from France. Okay. Lots of other comments on the Facebooks, but yeah, we'll see if we'll the questions that were here were, will there be a part 2, I guess?
Well, you know what? I definitely have really enjoyed all of our talks, and your passion and enthusiasm is very obvious. And we definitely are going to invite you back. I don't know if it would be strictly a part 2 to this, or if it might be something where we ask you to actually help us teach a workshop of some sort.
I'd be honored.
I think that might be the logical follow-up to this. I mean, I would love to learn from you. I mean, when you were visiting and we did a little bit of sketching, it felt like there was a whole world of language that you know, even without learning a lot of the traditional stuff, there's some great moves there, just compositionally, that I think a lot of tattooers could you know, gain by learning.
That'd be awesome, brother. I'd be honored.
So
yeah. you might also think about if any of these artists would like to do a Zoom interview with you, you know, or Zoom in with them. And maybe, I don't know that some people in the technologies are averse, but there's got to be a couple of them that might be down.
Right on. Well, so is Perpetual Roots the shop? Is it open yet?
No, we are we tried to open a shop during COVID, so it happens to be one of the slowest times in the world, but we are almost there. We're literally right around the corner. We just have the last of the inspections, and then we'll be good. We're actually ready to tattoo in the shop now. We're just waiting for logistics. So once we get that, then hopefully soon, hopefully within the next 2 weeks, I would say, and then we'll be good, brother.
Nice. Well, you can follow Keoki at Perpetual Roots with a Z as his Insta name, and yeah, he's always posting great stuff there. And I'll have announcements about when the shop is open. Yeah, we'll have to follow this up sometime. Anything final you want to say before we sign off?
I mean, just keep doing what we're doing, you know, going out there, keep a positive mind, positive energy, keep pushing and growing. And that's all we can do. I myself grow every day. I don't have all the answers, but all I can do is just pass what I know. And I thank you for the opportunity. I thank Gabe. I thank Reinventing the Tattoo, Hyperspace Studios, you guys, for just even considering me to come out here and spread this knowledge.
Right on. Well, really appreciate you coming on. This has been fantastic. And thanks everyone who tuned in.